is coming. The second issue would be the price, where the fuel is coming, whether the government is going to pass on the price increases which are required for sustainability to the consumers or not. I think there are a number of issues around those things, and I think, rental power by definition is nothing different than IPP except that it's a short-term in nature. And I think we need to look at those things. And in Pakistan, as you know, there's a huge issue about the circular debt and to what extent those issues could be addressed. So it's a complicated issue. It's not a single answer to it. But if it could be made proven into a sustainable project, then we will look at it. One area where we are shying away from, and I think this is country specific also, but generally, although there are exceptions, is on the coal. IFC is trying to move away from the coal-fired projects. Yes, we are partnering with microfinance institutions in Pakistan. The latest one, I don't work in that area, but I know we have worked with the Ccsk. We're doing something with Ccsk at the moment. We have done with the first microfinance bank in Pakistan as well. So certainly this is a growing area for IFC activities.
Yeah.
In the present situation of the economy around the world, meltdowns and everything, nobody has answered this question so far, whether it was the policies which were responsible for this or whether it was the administration of the policies which were responsible for this.
As I said, I think the two things, right, which has happened. It's the consumption, which was very high, and it was driven by the trade imbalances, really, which exist even today. So, for example, if China is, even today, since the crisis, have accumulated another $500 billion, $500 billion, that money needs to be spent somewhere. You just can't keep that kind of money in a bank. So if the money is going to be utilized, it's going to buy the US Treasury, it keeps artificially the cost of debt down. That encourages consumption, and sometimes, like in this particular country, I'm sure there are people you know of or even yourselves who have lost money in this country in the real estate. And the question really is that, why did it all happen? Well, of course one was speculation, but the second thing was it's cheap money available. Simply as that. And whenever you have, the problem with the inexpensive money is that if it is available, it is sometimes going to be used unwisely. Misused. It is. Because
so
the cost,
you are advocating the higher rate of interest for the money.
It normally you would expect it to be higher than what it is. If you're expecting the debt cost to be 2 or 3%, or right now it's extremely low, it's even lower than the inflationary rate. So the question really is, are these sustainable?
I have a couple of questions. Is there a minimum or maximum amount where IFC finance, and for how many years?
There is no minimum in theory, but of course there is administration cost for us. And below a certain number, it doesn't make any sense. Sometimes we will do it. Sometimes we will even do $200,000 just because it is a sector which is a priority for IFC. So for example, if it's a microfinance, which is a priority of IFC, and certainly it's an area where you don't require too much money initially, at least we go with smaller amounts. Normally, anything which is less than $4 or $5 million, it's administratively it's more expensive for us to do this thing. Now, in the terms of the tenors, we provide long-term money. Again, it varies from country to country. It varies from sector to sector. It varies from time to time. So, for example, in infrastructure, we have even provided 20 years money. It depends on the needs of the project and what the country is. So it will really varies. But we'll follow the market on this.
There is two schools of thought. Like you said, that with the tight monetary policy, they have jacked up the markups to contain the M2 money supply and to contain the inflation. Okay, I understand. But the repercussion of these medicines, the side effects are very severe. In Pakistan, we have seen, and I'm fighting with the government state bank every now and then, that the industrialization growth has been seized. With a higher markup, nobody is putting up plant and machineries, and which is causing social issues. We are unable to generate new job opportunities. and portable surplus. So it is, there are two schools of thought that if it is too tight a monetary policy and too high a markup, yes, you may contain inflation, but then you will also hamper your growth, which is equally important for a government to address the social issues. So I want your very candid views on this issue, that how to keep a balance whereby you can still contain the inflation and you can contain the reserve money supply and too, but at the same time, the investment in industry and growth will also take place. I want your views, please.
Biggest questions with all the central banks and the Federal Reserve deals with how to make this balance. That's the game. That's the monetary policy. What should be the exact balance? Nobody knows, to be honest. I think everybody strives. Inflation, of course, is a huge tax on people. It is a huge tax on people. Governments lose their power simply because of the inflation is high. On the political sphere, but on the economic sphere also, it causes a lot of headaches for people. There's no easy answer. I think the government strives all around the world to keep a balance. Hopefully the tight monetary policies are short-term in most cases, but we also have seen, as in the global meltdown, the results of the loose monetary policies. We have seen both of them. So there is a need to balance, but nobody has gotten it the right thing, right way so far.
In relation to Dr. Saab's question, what I would really like to know is how do you, or what we've seen in the past, the performance of highly regulated economies and the free economies. Because what we've seen, United States example, as a completely free economy, has temporarily gone into a temporary nationalization, what we would call probably of the few organizations. How do you compare those with the recent economic situation? And number two is, what is the lesson we have learned out of this situation?
So I'll take the last one first, I think. Like everything else, this is my personal view, that we haven't learned to think. I mean, this is what I would, because I'll say that because if you look at the root causes of what the problem was, and the question is, have they been addressed? And the answer is no. China is still running a huge surplus. Their currency seems to be undervalued. The other countries are running deficits. So the question is, what have we learned? The focus in the United States has been on the symptoms to control the crisis rather than address the long-term issues related to lack of savings in the country. Nobody has focused on those issues. So the question really is, have we learned anything? I doubt it. I think people, particularly businesses and banks, have very short memories, as you know, on these things. And everybody's celebrating that we have come out of this crisis. I'm not sure we have. The other question you had with how do we compare the free economies with the controlled economies. Look, first of all, I want to set aside this early notion that the United States is a free economy. I mean, it is a very regulated economy. I mean, if you really look at it, where from the banking to getting that hamburger from McDonald's, and you see how many regulations it goes through, you will see that it's very, very regulated economy. So I just want to be done with that notion. I think where pretty much all the countries have suffered to some extent as long as they have been connected to the world economy. So if I was in Egypt and Syria, and one of the things they were saying was, look, we have done well, nothing has happened. What's the lesson here? We shouldn't be connected to the rest of the world. No, it isn't really the lesson there. I don't see anybody in the Middle East and North Africa, which the region I deal with at the moment, anybody who is not focused on opening up their economies. I think this is the way to go. It is happening. Some have advanced more than others, certainly. It has also to do with one of the biggest issue which I deal with all the time, the capacity in the public sector and also private sector to a large extent to face the challenges which is being brought to them by the opening of the economies. I don't think anybody's prepared. But particularly the public sector is very constrained in terms of the people, human capital, this is what essentially I'm talking about it, to make the right policies which are necessary to address these issues. And the private sector also is not, at the moment in many countries, they're not able to evaluate the risks associated